And we are live on air, and Sue is going to kick off our last show for the season. Sue?
All right, everybody, welcome to our season finale of TL News Night. And we have some very, very special guests tonight, and Michelle will be introducing everybody, but I am Sue Levine, teacher librarian in Atlanta, Georgia. Michelle?
Hi, I would like to introduce our guests tonight, and then I will start with, on the left, we have Dave Schrader, who is the VP of Sales for Gales, part of Cengage Learning. And then I'm going to skip over Jane, because I think Jane's going to introduce herself. And I'm going to go over to Michael James, who is the Vice President of Sales for the Northeast and Canada in K-12 and public libraries. Gosh, I hope I got all that right.
Just sales manager.
And then I'm going to skip over Nikki because she'll introduce herself, and Shannon and Sherry, and Sue already talked, and I'm going to go to Randall, who is the owner of Mackin. But I'm going to come back to Shannon because sitting next to her is Eric Fitzgerald, who is the VP of Direct Distribution Sales. Is that correct?
You got it for Capstone.
Okay, great. So those are our panelists today, and then I'm going to let everyone else take over the parts that they were going to take over.
All right, Jane, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Jane Lofton. I'm the teacher librarian at Maricosta High School in Manhattan Beach in California, and I'm sorry my lower third, my label, doesn't seem to be working tonight. But anyway, I'm delighted to be here.
That's technology. Sherry, introduce.
Hi, I'm Sherry Gick. I'm from Rossville, Indiana, and I'm a library instructional technology specialist here, K through 12.
Thank you. And Shannon.
I'm Shannon McClintock Miller, and I was a teacher librarian, and now I am an educational and librarian consultant and speaker.
Once a librarian, always a librarian, right?
I will always be a teacher librarian.
100% agree. And I'm Nikki Robertson. I am from Alabama. This year I left the library, but for the 2015-2016 school year, I'll be returning to the library. So excited about that. I'm going to take you real quick into a screen share, and hopefully this will work. If it doesn't work, let me know. Holla. Just to go over our purpose. And so the purpose of TL News Night, and this is our last show for this season, we're excited to have vendors here because vendors are our friends with our special guest, Michelle. If you have questions or comments during tonight's show, please use the hashtag TLChat on Twitter or use the question link on the video that you see here tonight. The purpose, of course, is to tell our story because, as we know, telling our story is how we get out all the amazing things that are going on in our libraries and let those people in charge of whether we keep libraries or not and librarians in our schools knowing how important it is to have us in those schools. So we have to tell our story because we're the media now, and it's our story that needs to be heard. If you would like to be part of the TL News Night show, please go to the TL News Night wiki page. You just type in on the search TL News Night and you'll get there. It's the first thing that pops up in the search. And fill out if your organization would like to be featured on TL News Night. We've had lots of amazing state library associations on, and we want yours to be part of our TL News Night Superstars. And so let's get back to our show. And we already know, having been librarians, how important our vendors are to us every single day. And who do we need to pass this over to? Are we passing it to Shannon or to Michelle to kick us off and introduce us and get the conversation started tonight?
Shannon, why don't you go?
I think we lost you guys for just a second.
Okay.
But I'm going to go ahead and Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Good. I know you already introduced everybody, but we're super excited to have you, Michelle, as one of our guest hosts and the vendors with us tonight because this kind of came about, Michelle, she does a great conversation with the vendors at School Library Journal Summit every year. And it's such a success. Always love to hear about the new things that the vendors are doing, and we thought it would be a great way to end our year just to have a frank conversation with all of them. And so we're super excited to have you on, Michelle, and of course all of our special guests. And we're going to let you take over, but we're going to jump in when we have questions and comments, and so you can take it from here.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for inviting me to do this. I'm really excited to have this conversation, and we have so much to learn from our vendors, and also from our conversations we have with our vendors. And this session was actually called "Vendors Are Our Friends" because it's important that we underscore that we have allies here on our panel. And I remember that when we had this conversation last fall at School Library Journal, one of the concerns I had was that there seemed to be these questions from the audience saying, why can't you, why can't you, why can't you? And I found that I was frustrated by that because these guys are trying so hard to make it right for us, and we're in this challenging place where digital content is really not made accessible to a lot of our school libraries and a lot of our patrons because of what's going on with publishers. But these are our advocates. These are the people who are actually trying to make things happen so that they can get their goods into our schools. So this is a great opportunity for us to have this conversation and to share it. So I'm going to start with my first question is, collectively, as collaborators, how can we best prepare our learners for the future needs of the information age? And I'll just start, I'm going to start with Randall because we have gone left to right on everything, so now I'm just going to go right to left. So Randall?
Make sure to
unmute.
All right, I was on mute. So anyway, thank you, Michelle, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here and to have this this chat with everyone. And it's kind of a rebirth of some things we've been talking about. But when we look at the future and future learners and preparing and understanding what's ahead of us, it's understanding technology is a really important factor, not just for the people who are doing the work in the schools, but the students are at another level, teachers are at one level. The reality check of exactly who knows what and how we get to the point of coming together where the students are reacting seriously to the teachers and the librarians and to the people who are administering the information. I find it a fairly big gap these days with devices and different ideas about how things should be done. But it's really getting everyone on the same page and trying to expand that common information of how things work and understanding how content is delivered. But the kids have a viewpoint that's quite often different than the teachers and school librarians. School librarians seem to be much more in touch than the teachers in the classroom, and administration seems to be lagging in a lot of respects. So it's just a constant upgrading of knowledge.
Great, great. And Eric, do you have any thoughts to add to that?
I do. When I think about preparing kids for the future, I think about a conference that I was at, and Intel actually sponsored it. And they brought one of their futurists. You know, they're a big enough company that they can have someone called a futurist. But this lady was a spectacular speaker, and her whole message was about how 80% of the jobs that Intel will be hiring for when kids in K-12 graduate college don't exist today. Mm-hmm. And so I think that really is that's a kind of scary thought on the one hand, if you like to know where you're going and what's happening. I guess the other, what it makes me think of, though, is librarians teach kids to learn on their own in ways that are pretty unique to just library. And so if 80% of the things people are going to be doing we don't know about today when these kids are adults, I think it puts us in a very great position in the library to really teach kids how to learn and be lifelong learners and researchers. And so I guess, to me, it's sort of a back to basics, you know, research methodologies, feeling comfortable exploring places that you haven't been before, and using tools to gain knowledge that you maybe don't know you need today, but that's those strategies for learning that librarians and libraries bring to the table for kids are going to be critically important for those kids in the future. So I guess that would be my thought.
Great. Mike?
Here. Hi, how's everybody doing? Michelle, thank you very much for inviting me to this. This is great. What we've seen, in our travels, I would say, is there is a gap between, what students are using and, what they're comfortable with in terms of researching. Whether it's an iPad or a laptop, we need to be able to know the user and the ways that they search. EBSCO is very big on usability studies, looking at where screen or eyes go on the screen, or looking at all the devices that that kids and teachers use. We're running into, when I first started 10 years ago, it was how do we get the kids off of Google to research all these great resources that the library has to offer. Well, now it's how do we get the teachers off of Google, because you're dealing with teachers that do it too. So it's real. There's a communication gap there from what we see, and how do we streamline it better so that it can be fast and efficient and produce the results that you want out of all of your products. That's really what it is. Students are not necessarily recognizing or caring about the names of specific resources, as much as they are what's inside of it and the content. So how do we bring all that great content together and streamline it so that it's optimized, so that the libraries can get so that the students can get the information that they want, and not feel like they have to go to Google or Wikipedia, which is that's the go-to, and that's that's one of the biggest hurdles we continue to face.
Great, thanks. Dave? If you're muted.
Well, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage here since is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage as I crashed out and I just signed back on. So can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is really what can we do sort of collaboratively between school librarians and you guys to really better prepare our students for the future, for the future of information delivery?
Well, I'll avoid the rant of wasting the time during the school day on standardized tests and all of those things that are somewhat meaningless to that student's development. And I'll talk more about. I think as a group we need to think about how can we help our students critically think better. I interview hundreds of people every year, and I never ever in an interview ask somebody to do a math problem or a history fact or a geography fact or a chemical equation. All of those things.
You didn't have a bubble sheet? You didn't have a number 2 pencil and a bubble sheet, David?
I thought about that, but the one time we tried that, it really didn't work out. But more importantly, it's about how do you master that information? How do you become proficient with that information? And how do you apply that information in authentic situations? And I don't think anybody in the school probably does more of that or is better positioned to do that than school librarians. So as vendors, what can we do with our products and our e-content, which is important for students to learn how to use, in order to help you better prepare those students and, as importantly, better tell the story to the rest of the school ecosystem about how you're doing the preparing students for the 21st century, preparing students with the critical skills that they need. And I think that's the missing piece, is we've got to help you all tell the story to those folks that make decisions in the school environment, because I don't think they understand the good things that are happening in the school libraries.
I couldn't agree more with you, Dave.
Great.
Awesome.
So this is kind of a follow-up question, and I'm not gonna, we're not gonna do the round robin on this next question just because there may be some overlap with the last one. So the next question is really, what would you like to see change in our profession. And Dave just sort of touched on it, so I'm just going to let whoever wants to step up and speak to that if you have anything to add to that. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Well, just one thing quickly. Librarians need to be more broad-based, and we've been talking about this for years, and there are those that get it. I mean, all of you sitting here today and many hundreds and hundreds, thousands perhaps around the country. There are way too many school librarians who have not risen themselves up to another level and have not expanded their knowledge base, and I think that's the key, and that will save their positions, it will save the profession, and it will allow people to become really key players and resource managers within their schools and actually do some things that no one else can do, and we just need to encourage people to expand their knowledge base.
I have two quick thoughts. Sorry, Dave. One of them revolves around, you know, we've seen a lot of pain in some states, in particular around the position of library. And I don't think that the superintendent or the principal says, "Oh, I just don't like libraries. I'm getting rid of it." It's hard decisions that they're having to make, and so I guess I would just start with that this isn't a personal attack, and I do think it's really important that that we all sort of stand up and say, this is important. We know you've had to make choices, but this is more important now than ever because of this information age. Who else is going to manage and teach strategies to consume information? And I guess one other thought, a lot of organizations are sort of pushing away the library tech or the people that aren't certified librarians, which I understand, but it feels like mentoring some folks that might be in a tough position themselves to really keep the library program alive for those schools and those kids in those schools. So sort of taking in maybe less credentialed, less experienced people that are just in a position filling a job, bring them into organizations, bring them in to this culture and this sharing that all these wonderful professionals on this show and so many other events do to really save the position in that school and serve those kids, even though we don't like how it's happening in a lot of cases. Bring those people in and make sure that program is the best it can be. If those people are on their own and the program is really poorly run, that school may not ever get a library back. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, let's just call it temporary, but let's mentor people that are not really well equipped to do a good job for their kids. And, you know, someday then they might get their library degree and they might have a real library program again. And it's sort of an olive branch maybe to those programs. Yeah. But
it is about passion.
Yeah,
that's right here. It's about passion.
So
I would just say I'm probably one of the few unique individuals out here that I'm very, very passionate about the Dewey Decimal System and MARC records and card catalog systems and all of those things. But probably news to a lot of us on the phone, most people outside of the library really don't care. And I'm not trying to belittle and say that those things aren't important. They're extremely important to the way we handle information. But maybe as opposed to going out and talking about how libraries are the social fabric of in the fabric of our society and all of those things, start talking about the good work that you do and challenge others to do the same thing and talk in terms of what's meaningful to the audience. Student achievement. How do you prepare students to get ready for that next step in life, whether it's career or college? Those are the areas that you make the impact, and talk in those terms as opposed into library terms.
Boy, Nikki, that sounds familiar. Sounds like some discussions we've had. I don't know anybody on this panel that's passionate about Dewey Decimal System for sure. We're kind of all about being student-centered and showing those achievements, but thank you for definitely bringing that to light. You're going to get Nikki on a soapbox. Watch out.
Hey, do you remember at the last AASL breakfast when Jennifer Lagarde said the Dewey Decimal System is not a life skill?
And a collective gasp was heard. Nikki and I were applauding. So.
We were like, and it was a vacuum in there as everyone sucked out there. Oh!
But I think you people that are doing the good work have to continue that drumbeat, as unpopular as it is in some of the circles.
Dave, I just have a thought, and I'm sorry to speak twice on one topic, Michelle.
It's okay. It's okay.
We're not surprised.
Eric, I need to see you out in the hallway for a moment, please.
Overcommitting, I'm sorry. But along those same lines, you know, we work with customers every day, and I just almost want to take some people's hands and say, please let us do your processing. You know, please accept all these services that we do for you. Your job is not processing. Your job is not, you know, sort of running the warehouse and protecting the inventory. Let us do those things for you for free or really cheap. And all the vendors really do a great job with those services. But, you know, get your time focused on working with kids, working with the other educators that you're really a leader for in your building. Sort of take yourself out of the office and get out front. And so I would just say, kind of to follow on what Dave said, you know, really focus on what is student-centered and what is supporting the rest of the staff and getting their job done. And I don't see programs in schools where that's happening that are having any struggles with, you know, resources, or, you know, that it just becomes apparent that that's a critical program. So I would just say, let the vendors do whatever work we can for you. I don't care, even if it costs money, pay for it, because you're more valuable than you think.
And we've been doing that for years, and the reality is those people that recognize that are doing a better job because they can focus on kids, they can focus on new changing ideas and attitudes, and they can listen, and they can help teachers teach and help kids learn. I mean, it's a matter of rolling up your sleeves and getting in there and working with kids at the base level, not worrying about the details, even though they're important, but we can handle that on this end.
And I think that, you know, a library in a school, it's very apparent when you walk into a school if a library is an island, or if it's got the spider webs branched out to all the classrooms, all the faculty and staff. It's one of those things that you just pay attention to, because if there's not the community within the school with the library, then there's communication breakdown. And communication's how, you know, I mean, it's the most important part of all this, because everything changes so fast, and the way you access it changes so fast. So as long as everybody's on the same page in terms of the librarians and the students and the faculty, I think, you know, everybody wins.
Right. Good point. I did a webinar in October, and it was how to pitch your program to your administrator, and basically it boiled down to 4 words. It's, I help kids learn. Is that 4 words? I help kids learn. Yeah, 4. Okay, good. Good. I really had to count. I wrote it down before. I was like, 4 words, yeah? Okay, and it didn't sound like 4. But that's really what it comes down to. So those are excellent points. And, you know, I'm hearing a little bit of frustration from all of you that you see that there's like kind of two elements that are out there in the field, and you're really trying to pull people into this other world of really thinking about the kids and thinking about innovation and thinking about new ideas and trying to transform learning. So I think you're echoing something that's pretty strong out there. All right, so another topic that's of great concern to school librarians is really just e-content delivery. And so what do you see as the greatest challenge to e-content delivery in the future? And as I say this, this has occurred to me. Dave mentioned standardized tests, and I had to laugh because we're in the middle of standardized testing. And yes, I went to the Capitol last week to participate in a rally against the standardized testing that's taking over our universe. And I laugh because when I walk into the classroom where the tests are happening, there's this growing stack of phones on a desk. And I keep saying, well, what's going to happen next year when they're all wearing these? So there was a time in the world when we used to actually, like, our bags were checked for cameras when we walked into concerts. And that universe is long gone. Like, they threw up their hands and gave up. They said, okay, obviously people are going to take pictures at our concerts. And where is that line? So I'm thinking about digital learning. And yes, I bought the watch mostly because if you're going to talk about mobile learning, it's important to start thinking about what would mobile learning look like if you couldn't type and you couldn't read. And I think that's what I've got on my wrist, is a mobile learning device where I can't type and I can't read, and what does that look like? So having said all of that, I repeat the question, what do you see as the greatest e-content delivery challenge to the future?
I'll start.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. From what I've seen, e-content delivery in schools and even in public libraries and academics. So many resources, so many databases, so many ebooks, so many ebook providers, and now you've got digital magazine content from several different providers. I mean, it's overwhelming, and in a school environment, you're dealing with kids that, like I had mentioned earlier, will just type something in a box and want it right away. And if you have a website where it takes 5, 6, 7 clicks to get to a database link, and maybe it's an A to Z list, and you have to scroll down and you're going to lose them. That's just the way it is now. So it's really just trying to figure out, how we can kind of take all that content and bring it to the front of the user experience. Michelle's familiar with it. We've talked about it with other sites. Discovery Service, basically a Google for all of your library resources, but it's not. You're talking about resources that provide useful information. So it's not like you're getting information from out on Google which may or may not be appropriate for research. You can use all of your electronic content through something like a Discovery Service, and it takes a while to build. There's a lot that goes into it, as Michelle will tell you. It can be very time-consuming, but the end result is that you have something that can be put right off of a library website to get into all the content, and it's a fully customizable product, and it's based on metadata from all different providers. So it's something to consider and think about in terms of e-content delivery, and it's we're not the only one that has it. But it's something that works across all devices. And if a student needs to access or do a search school content on their Android or their iPhone or their Galaxy, they can do that. That we have the ability to do that now. So yeah, I mean the research dynamic has changed immensely, and it's really just recognizing how your students are searching and what they're doing, and what's going to keep them coming back. What's going to make the experience good for them? And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Michael, I agree with you. First off, there's so many different sources out there. Our kids are lost. Our teachers are lost. This year, I've been working to establish a one-to-one program with MacBooks in my school, and the thing with the teachers is there's so much out there, so many resources out there. How do I decide which resource to use and when to use that resource? And so that's a big thing. And then also another thing I've seen in schools that aren't one-to-one but are bring your own device is a lot of vendors don't make their product device agnostic. And that's a problem. If it can only be accessed on a certain device, then that just puts a big kink in a teacher trying to teach in a bring your own device classroom, because what if only 5 of your kids have a device that can get the resource that you're wanting to use in the class? So
right. Yeah, and as a vendor, that's challenging because it does take time to have that functionality across all devices. So that's another. I mean, that's another challenge. You want to be able to. Look at Apple. They kind of have the market share as far as devices are concerned. But now, Microsoft is kind of inching up with, with their tablets, and you have a lot more out there. People use Androids. I know a ton of people who use Galaxy phones for everything. So I mean, that is challenging, and really the goal is to be functional across every device, because you want to reach as many people as you can. Another thing is geo authentication, where you're not signing in.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Try to sign in 33rd graders to something, or even have them type in a shortened URL.
Yeah, you're just yeah. I mean, even the younger kids are ahead of the eight ball. So it's like, yeah. I mean, you have to you have to consider all that stuff. And geolocation is very difficult because you're dealing with, content that is from different publishers, and it's hard to offer it that way. But we do our best to be able to do that, as do other companies. So I mean, that's really where it's headed. I want to be able to get it 24/7, without really any hassles in getting it.
Well, let me give a piece of advice to all vendors everywhere. When I'm signing up a classroom full of third graders to use a new product, if it doesn't have that little red button that says register or log in with Google, I'm almost going to pass it by, because getting kids to type in a username, a password, an email address, blah, 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 I've got to go home and drink at night if I do that with the classroom full of 30 third graders. But if they can just click on that red button, because we're a Google Apps for Education school, if they can just click on that red Google button and get right in, then we can get right into the learning and not waste half the class time on the hassle of that, and I'm not in a fetal position at the end of the day.
It's really about easy access to the right content all the time. That's what it's about. And choosing the proper platform, understanding your curriculum, understanding what you want to achieve in your school, and making a decision on how you're going to do that. There are lots of companies, ours included, that has addressed this across all platforms and across all mechanisms and all devices. But you have to make a decision, and you have to decide what you want and how you want it done, and then tell the vendors, tell the people you're working with how you want it to work. You have to communicate and demand the access at the level that you want it.
Great. So,
Yep.
Dave, Eric?
Yeah, I really see the problem. Two significant issues with this problem, and one we've kind of talked about, getting them access to the right content. And as vendors, we need to try to solve that. We need to figure out how to drive that content into the path of the learner, right? We don't want the real challenge and the real test to be, how do I sign into this database, or how do I sign into this product? We want the real test to be, how do I use that content? And so that's the second piece. I still think too often we define this problem by just gaining access to content. That's so 1980s, right? When it used to take you 80% of your time to find the content and 20% of your time to then synthesize it. We don't have that problem today. We have easy, for the most part, aside from signing on to various things, we have easy access to content. So how do we prepare that student when they're a worker in order to be able to distill all that various content so that they know what's reliable content, what they should be basing their business decisions on, what they should be making their life decisions, their financial decisions on? That's where, hey, if we're going to have standardized tests, maybe we ought to do that around how to use content, as opposed to whether or not you know a math problem that you can, look up on Google at some point, or probably never going to use once you graduate from high school.
Great. Eric?
As always, I have a list, so I'll keep it short. One challenge is, and I think we've touched on it, but one big challenge around this is discovery. There are lots of methods, whether it's geolocation or IP authentication, usernames, passwords. I still believe that MARC records with the 856U field is the way to go. Keep all your resources in one place. So that addresses discovery. From a publisher's perspective, the challenge around digital content is it's actually more expensive for us to make and deliver. And so
Can you explain that? Because I got to tell you, as a librarian, and I think there are lots of us in this field, explain that, because we don't get it.
This is my most controversial statement in all these little panels, right, Michelle?
Yeah.
We still have a book where the actual printing of the book is the cheapest part for a publisher. Book printing is not expensive. Content development, licensing pictures, bringing in content consultants, bringing in literacy consultants, all these people that contribute to the book. We have a big investment before it goes to the printer, and that hasn't changed now that we're going to this digital world. We still have a warehouse, we still are creating all this content, but now we're buying licenses for not just a printed version for North America. We have to buy a license for every photo for all formats. So, you know, for all the locations in the world that it might be used for. So, and if you're a photographer and it's going to go out on the internet, you want more money for that photo now. You know, and that's how they make their living. I certainly understand it. And then on top of that, we've got to buy the rights to a game. We've got to get in our case at Capstone, we've got a live voice audio dub, so we pay someone to do that. We've got programmers building all this stuff, maintaining platforms. So we have all the costs that we had as a book publisher plus a whole lot of new ones. Right. And so, you know, that so we're all dealing with. I mean, I do this in my personal life. I'm dealing with, you know, if it's on the internet, it should be free or really, really cheap. But I sort of get what I pay for too when I get free or really, really cheap. And I'm coming around to say, well, it's worth subscribing to a certain music service or a certain video service because I get what I get the quality I want. So I guess one of our challenges as a group is to sort of understand the value of content, and, you know, vetted quality content is worth something, even if it's delivered over the internet.
And one of the things we're doing is, you know, getting into consortial and district level buying, and that makes a big difference in terms of this cost, and spreading this cost out over a larger body and sharing resources through the technology that's available. That's vitally important to this, addressing this cost issue.
Right. And yet we have publishers that we're working with, like Hachette, who won't. I mean, it explicitly says you cannot buy this at the consortia level. So that's a frustration on our part.
That's why we have to have publishers that will do something else, and right. They'll fill the gap. Right, Eric?
Yes, sir, Mr. Heisey. That's true.
And
go ahead. Somebody was about to say something.
My question. This is Alabama's 11th year with zero funding for libraries. Zero funding. How can we, with zero funding, support these vendors and purchase the materials you have for sale if our legislators do not see libraries as important enough to fund or to give any funding? How can we advocate with the vendors, or how can the vendors advocate at the legislation level of funding? Because if we're not in the library, there isn't going to be anybody in the school who's going to purchase your products that are geared towards libraries if there's no librarian and there's no library.
Well, it's one of the reasons we're all going towards the classroom. It's one of the reasons it's a trend in the country. Every publisher and every aggregator and every distributor is looking at the classroom as the future. And so the job that you have, that we all have, is to get schools to understand, especially in Alabama, to realize that the school librarian is a vital part of the educational process. And we've got to make it clear that without this individual or this learning center and this ability for people to come to a professional and get assistance at the highest level to be able to help the educational process in the classroom. So it's really re-educating the administrators, or we're going to lose the quality of the library. We're going to lose the quality and the value of librarianship if we don't make it part of the educational process.
I have several thoughts. You know, Alabama, like other states, has line item state level funding in some cases for library. A lot of places don't, and it's a local funding issue. So I think potentially it's making that case as a shared resource across the building. You know, if we're still buying classroom libraries from Scholastic, a whole bunch of, you know, really inexpensive books that maybe last a year and then they're gone and you're replacing them, I think it's sort of making the business case for the library with the local funding would be one option, to say, hey, listen, I'm gonna professionally curate and buy quality resources that we all share, as opposed to spreading it around and having little kingdoms all over the building. You know, I'm a community oriented in this school community. I'm going to buy community level resources. There are a lot of states that don't have state level funding, and that's, you know, you got to make that case that a library has a very strong return on investment.
Right.
So using that business term of, you know, we're spending the money in lots of different ways. I'd like to step forward in this building and do it responsibly.
That's right, Eric.
would be one option. Actually, Randall and Mackin has, is it Books for Schools, Randall?
Yes.
Or Funds
for
Schools?
Books.
Is that
Funds
for Books?
Yeah, where we provide funding for, and 100% of the resources or the collected money goes to the school to buy materials, and it's helped a lot. We've helped a lot of schools.
I've had 2 successful Funds for Books campaigns, so it's a really fun program.
Yeah, we need to expand that and get people realizing that if we pull together, we can do a lot of great work. But we got to get the message out to the administration. That's the key.
Mm-hmm.
And
then
I have
another thought I would have, and I don't know if I'm cutting in and out. I'm sorry if I am. But I think there's a great movement of advocating with each other, but find those parents that are out there that can help you really get the PTO and other groups in the community around you. Get that collection of really active parents going, because I know principals and superintendents do what parents want ultimately.
That's a very good point.
Now, Michelle, I hope you don't have this question, but I know that ever since ebooks first came out, this has been a question that has gone around library communities all over, and Kate is asking it on Twitter right now.
Come back to us, Nikki.
Books, right?
Say it again.
But my actual paper book is my own.
Nikki, we're losing your questions, but I have a feeling I know where she's going. So we want to try it again?
There's a certain vendor that after 26 checkouts, that book disappears. But if my library book, my physical library book, is checked out 26 times, it doesn't just poof and disappear. And I think that's a big concern and a big question and a very hot topic issue about our ebooks, and it's being asked on Twitter right now, so I think it's a legitimate thing to ask right now. Since
my last webinar was a little bit about licensing, and there's such a broad range of trade publishing licensing, so I'll let you guys speak to that because you're the experts.
Well, it's certainly a big issue, and the publishers are in a quandary about what to do and how to continue their revenue streams, and so they are all over the board as to how they're going to maintain their revenue. And licensing is a serious issue, and we're just going to have to get them to understand that a public library is different than a school library, and the school's educational process is quite different in terms of the funding, and we need to have licensing arrangements for schools that work. And when we go to BEA next week and we talk to publishers, big and small, that's the message we're sending. You need to help us help schools. If you want to help if you want to help the educational process, if you want to help kids, then you're going to have to get these priced better, and you're going to have to make it so this digital world can function with all these devices and all this capability we have. Let's use it properly, and let's make it affordable.
Well, I think that might go back. Sorry, Michelle.
No, it's just kind of
it's a vicious
cycle because you have whole states that aren't funding libraries, so the school library systems become basically the forgotten stepchild by the trade publishers. But then, if they don't make it affordable, then states will never be able to buy the product. So it's this really terrible cycle that we're stuck in.
It goes back to what I was talking about before. My company, and I don't think anyone on this call is who you're talking about as far as ebooks expiring after certain circs, but I do understand, just like Randall said, I do understand what they're doing. They're running the math, and they're saying, we got to sell X number of books to cover the cost of creating the book. And maybe their math is wrong, but I think there's some really serious challenges that we face, which I think you're tipping your hat to, Michelle, that it's sort of, when there's a certain dollar amount you spend before it even goes to the printer, and until you cover that, it's just lost money. And everyone I know in this business really wants to get the products to the kids, and that's what we're all here for. But I understand it is fear-based, but there's also some math there that someone smarter than me probably figured out on their end. But So I get it, but I agree. We all need to find a solution, and one could be really to make a conscious effort to buy ebooks and to create that market. So some of it's fear-based from the consumer end too, to say, well, I'm gonna. We see a lot of people that are spending the majority of their business is still books, and a very small percentage is ebooks. And so it's sort of hard to make that case that someone's missing out on something as a publisher if it's really not that big of a market in actuality right now.
Yeah. Right. And the licenses can vary so much. So we can get a 12-month license, a 24-month license, a 1-to-1 license, or an unlimited simultaneous user license. We don't even really, it's very hard to even search our own collections to see which is which at one point. So if we've got some with you and some with you and some with you, we have to check 3 different places to figure out when they're going to expire and what we need to do next. So from our end, it's very
places,
and the prices are high for trainee content.
It's a big management
and they
problem.
are high. And for a tiny school, like I'm in a pre-K-12 school right now with barely 1,000 kids. Well, even the money
we're losing you, Nikki. Okay, I'm going to move on because we're losing you, Nikki. So the next question is pretty much, I think most of us covered on it, but I'm going to throw it out there just in case you have anything to add. We did this once before, and we're going to do it now. With the explosion of one-to-one and BYOT, what are some of the challenges you face, and how are you adapting for those?
Bring your own device is very interesting. A lot of times from, like places I've been, schools I've been into that are one-to-one, they give out all these devices, and that's it. They give them out, and there's like no kind of training on them or how they should be using them in the classroom, how they should be implemented into the classroom or the library. They're just giving out iPads because one-to-one is the trend. And you have kids, in libraries playing games on iPads, doing what they might have done on a laptop or on a desktop. So I think as far as one-to-one is concerned, that's a challenge. Maybe trying to figure out or having the students and faculty know how to use it and implement it into an educational setting.
Right.
There's a big education gap there, obviously. I mean, just handing out devices does not solve any problems, and it actually has created a lot of problems. Right? We have a lot of superintendents and a lot of people around the country who have decided this is the answer, and we're going to solve all our problems by giving everybody a device, devastating entire budgets. But without content, without planning, without good curriculum, without a good pedagogy, I mean, it doesn't happen. The device is not important in that respect.
Right.
Agreed with everything everyone said. We've given out these devices because we want teachers to teach differently. But you can't expect teachers to teach differently if you don't train them to teach differently. And we're responsible as vendors to make sure that we give out good content and good curriculum and good programs. We also have responsibility to make sure that there's a unique quality, or not a unique, but a quality, consistent experience on any type of device the student or the teacher is using. That as a vendor is what we're responsible for. We can't solve the other problem, but I do see it as a huge problem. They just pass out the devices and expect the teachers to teach differently, and it's just not going to happen. And actually, it's been, in many ways, a big waste of money for education that could have been put elsewhere.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and one-to-one, and particularly bring your own device is a great way to manage, some of those costs around the hardware. But like everyone else said, without some structure and a plan to actually use it, it gets pretty out of control pretty quickly. I think as a vendor, it's also a challenge. I don't think people realize, to make it work on an iPad, that same program or product suddenly stops working on like 70% of the computers in a school. So what we've had to do on a lot of our products is we actually have 2 or 3 parallel products that we've built to run on every platform. And so when someone is logging into Pebble Go, for instance, they might be logging into one of 3 different identical looking platforms, but we actually serve up from a different language based on what device you come in on. So for us, it's a real challenge to really support that. People don't think about how one device has a 6x12 form factor and another one might have a 12x7 or whatever. The screen sizes and aspect ratios and the programming languages can be really challenging to keep up with everything. So it's a challenge, but it's a great opportunity. And again, I think libraries are in a unique position to grab that and really take that challenge on and be the one that facilitates kids getting to that kind of content and using their devices and learning how to responsibly and usefully have that computer in their pocket going to work for them.
Hey, can we remind the listeners, Nikki says, Tom Murray and hashtag Future Ready, there's steps already out there to get ready for a one-to-one initiative so it'll be successful. So you don't really have to come up with those steps on your own. These are proven steps that schools need to be taken, and make sure that you guys look for that. Tom Murray, hashtag Future Ready. So
yeah, Tom does great work. That's an excellent suggestion.
Thanks for putting that in there, Nikki.
Yeah.
Our next question is really about patron preference. What do you know and what would you like to know? And maybe we can help with that, and maybe we can put our heads together and figure out what we can do to learn more and to be more informed. Does anybody want to take that? All of you at once?
I don't know if we all understand the exact tone of the question.
Okay, so what do our kids like? What do we know about what our kids like and what they don't like? And what are we doing to meet their needs? Like, forget the librarians for just a minute. Let's just focus on the kids.
They like iPhones, Google, and Wikipedia. That's what they like.
They like to use their phones. They like to have fun. They like to learn. They're going to learn no matter if we have good instructors and good direction or not, because they have the technology right in front of them. Our goal as good educators is to get them to move in the right direction and use the tools they have. But we have to listen, and that's where flipped learning comes in, and that's where a lot of these new ideas and concepts are so vitally important to getting kids interactive with their teachers, and good quality educators from the teacher-librarian standpoint, right on down to every individual in the school is extremely important to get these kids to be part of the process, and because they have all the tools in front of them in many cases.
I'm always surprised that there's a big diversity. There's we have a lot of clients that say, "Oh, I bought a few ebooks and they're just not taking off. I don't know what's going on there." And then on the flip side, we've had districts that installed a complete digital library, and we had scheduled for there to be teacher training, 2 weeks after we turned it on, and somehow the kids discovered it, and they did more reading in about 3 weeks between when we were supposed to launch it to their teachers and when we actually turned it on. They did more reading in those 3 weeks than their circulation had been prior with their library books. So I think there's a couple things. As if there's critical mass and there's enough digital resources that kids can keep going and keep reading and keep finding things of interest, they seem to really like digital once you get that critical mass and once you get sort of that word of mouth going amongst kids.
They love it once they hear it. I mean, we help teachers expose kids to Mac and VIA, and the idea there is not teaching the teacher so much, even though that's important, but once the kids get it, they run with it. I mean, it's so exciting to see them, and it moves through the entire school. Look what we have. I have my own backpack. I have my own access. I have my own content. I mean, it's so much fun to see kids get excited.
And can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. One thing too, that the activity or interconnectivity inside of those programs. Can I share this information or comment on this? So, can they share it from that?
We're losing you again, Nikki.
What is she
Sorry, I don't know. Can you type your question and then I'll repeat it?
I suspect the cat is somehow involved in this problem.
I haven't seen it yet, but
It's a beautiful kitty.
I had a thought. Oh, it's like bike lanes. I'm thinking, you have to build a bike lane and you have to make them there before people start to use them. And there's this weird transition where they've built a bike lane, they've basically cut out parking and all kinds of conveniences for car drivers, and people complain. And it's like they're not using it, but you have to have it there and before people actually use it. That's my e-content analogy.
But it is a lot of advertising and marketing is the key. It's just like all these databases that all these states bought for 25 years and spent millions of dollars and didn't tell anybody they were there. You've got to let the people know that the information exists, and you've got to train not only the teachers but the parents, and they can be extremely vital, and the administrators, and just the community itself has to know what's available. And once you can get that message out, then you get activity.
That's a really good point, Randall. I can't tell how many times I've gone into places and you show them, even at the state level, what they have, and they didn't know that they had it. And there's so much great content that a lot of states pay for, and it's just, it's not being delivered properly.
Right.
Critical mass on this digital. I think you're right on the bike lane, Michelle. Why would I buy a bike? There is no bike lane. And then you install the bike lane, and people don't own bikes yet because there wasn't a bike lane. But yeah, there is a critical mass factor to this where kids have to know that there's more than one little, we bought an ebook and no one looked at it. Well, of course, because that one book is not. They wouldn't come to your library with one book in it. Why would they go to your digital library with one book in it? You got to get that sort of mass where it has that value and everyone can plainly see that it's valuable and it's useful.
Learning is enthusiasm. That's all it is. I mean, you got to get people excited.
We have about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to actually just sort of stop us with the questions and give you all a chance, like literally, there's 4 of you, so you each get a minute. And we'll start with Dave because you've been quiet for a bit.
Well, that's only because I got crashed out again, so I had to sign back on. But first off, thank you for Michelle and Shannon and everyone for having me on tonight and sponsoring this. I appreciate it. Honestly, I think that the future for school libraries is pretty bright. I mean, I think we did a nice job tonight of pointing out some of the challenges and problems, but I feel optimistic about what's going on in school libraries for really the first time this past 6 months than I have been the past 5 years. I see funding being restored. I see some young people going into the profession, meaning that there's going to be people to take spots of retiring people. I see great things happening in the marketplace with regards to what different vendors are doing. And I think technology is really going to change education, and I think if you all keep up your good work, that those of us on the phone from the vendor side will continue to do our part in helping you all be successful. So thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, thank you very much for this. This has been excellent and very informative. I just think that there's so many great resources. States purchase great resources. Individual schools purchase their own great resources on top of those, and we're seeing a major shift in the way it's all accessed. I think librarians, staff members, teachers, educators alike need to be attuned to the fact that the way people research has completely changed, and it's constantly changing now. Maybe it was several years ago looking at different databases or opening an ebook, but now, I mean, it's so much more. There's so much more to it, and there's so much more information, and it's really just trying to figure out the best way to access the great content from all the vendors, the ones present here today and the ones that aren't. You guys get a lot of really great stuff, Let's get it out to your students. Let's get it out to your staff in the best possible way that you can, and we appreciate it. We appreciate this opportunity to talk to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Eric?
Well, I thank you all for having me on as well, and so many great friends. I just love. It's so nice to be in this community together. I feel the same way Dave does. It's a very bright future. for school libraries. I don't think there's ever been a time when the skills that we teach in library have been more important. And I know, you know, we found the bottom in some cases, and so it's all up from here. But I think it's a really bright future. And I just want to reiterate one of the things that some of us vendors always talk about is how this active community of libraries is so amazing and dynamic and wonderful, but you all are the same people that we see every place. And we love you dearly. But find some friends that aren't coming and aren't involved and aren't connected and aren't seeing what you're seeing or listening to all you that have such great ideas. Find some friends, 1 or 2 people that you're going to say, you're coming with me to this event. Let me tell you what I learned. Really reach out to those people that maybe aren't in the, there's probably 500 librarians that are involved in most events like this and most, exhibits and all those kinds of things. Just bring a couple people along. Mentor, please.
Good advice. Thank you, Eric. Randall?
This is probably the best opportunity in the last 100 years for school librarians as far as I can see. If we can band together, if we can have a grassroots movement, all of us together, this is the best time that it could possibly be because the vendors aren't adversarial anymore to the school systems. We're all trying to do the right thing. We need to get, like Eric says, more people involved. We need to get this message out. If we can take the opportunity to use the technology and to use all the benefits that are available to us, school librarianship can be the most important position in education in K-12 and perhaps beyond, because this is the time when the purveyor of information, a learning center concept, getting together and helping people learn, and everyone working together to bring as many people in as possible is going to make a big difference, and a librarian can be the driver of that. So school librarians nationwide, it's time to stand up and do what we can do to make a difference for education. We can change it.
Beautiful.
Amen, brother.
Yay. All right, I want to say huge thanks to Dave Schrader of Gale, part of Cengage. Huge thanks to Michael James of EBSCO. Huge thanks to Eric Fitzgerald of Capstone. Huge thanks to Randall Heisen of Mackin. And take it away, whoever is going to take over now.
Wait, before we continue, I just want to say one thing. I just want to thank the vendors for making my life so happy. Vendors come in with suggestions and giving me great information about their products, and the vendors that get to me the quickest and know the most get my money because I am lucky. I am a wealthy librarian. And I do appreciate you. Any vendor that comes in that doesn't have those things obviously doesn't have the same advantage, but I mainly get fantastic information and help from the vendors. And I love you vendors. I love you so much. So thank you.
We love you too. Sue.
We love you too.
And I think Sherry's going to lead us out tonight.
Absolutely, guys. This is definitely one of the highlights of this season for sure, if not for the past 2 seasons. So thanks for joining us tonight. Remember, this is our last episode for the school year. So this summer, be sure to connect, share, learn, and grow. Use that hashtag TLChat 24/7 with us. If you're at ISTE, and even if you're not at ISTE, join us for a special broadcast after the Librarians Network breakfast that morning, and we'll do a kind of a summary show for you. And we hope that you've enjoyed us. Be sure and look us up and get your state association on the map and be a guest next season. That's a wrap, guys.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Great summer.
Good night.
All right. I'm stopping the live broadcast,
Maybe.
and we are finished.
Okay. Good
Wow.
job,
For
everyone.
being here. We lost.
We're still showing live. Are we
I'll
still
see
recording?
you next time.
Still shows live, but bye everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Sue.
Good night.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks for
Appreciate
coming, and thanks for doing the early checking in early and making sure our sound was
It was
good.
great. It was a great night. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Great. Well, we'll get to do it again in October live.
All right, great.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
See y'all.
Esty.
Good night.
All right, ladies. Bye-bye.
We out.